same mistakes without realizing it. Throughout my years in therapy, I've observed a recurring pattern. Wonderful. Intelligent people with so much to offer end up losing the person they're interested in because they do too much, pursue her relentlessly, and are always available. And the worst part is that they do it out of genuine affection and a desire to build something beautiful. But they're activating the exact opposite of what they intend in the other person. Today we'll delve into something rarely explained with the necessary depth. We're going to explore the female mind, its biochemistry, its attachment styles, and understand what really happens when you decide to stand firm, with dignity, and stop chasing after someone. Believe me, from a neurological and psychological perspective, it's fascinating. But before we continue, if this is resonating with you and you feel it's exactly what you needed to hear, give me a like now. I assure you that what follows will change your perspective. Stay until the end, because in the final minutes, I'll reveal something crucial that few understand about the exact moment when everything transforms. To understand what goes through a woman's mind when you stop chasing her, we first need to look at something essential. The brain doesn't differentiate between physical hunger and emotional hunger as we often think. If you relentlessly pursue someone, if you're always available, responding instantly, seeking contact, you send a very specific signal to the other person's brain. There's no scarcity here, no challenge, nothing to conquer. And the human brain, especially in the initial attraction phase, values what it perceives as valuable, scarce, or requiring effort. I'm not talking about manipulation or a cruel game. It's evolutionary biology. For millions of years, we learned that what's easy to obtain probably has less value for survival. When you stop pursuing, when you stand your ground, something unexpected happens in that woman's mind. First comes surprise. Her brain was expecting your message, your call, your initiative. She had become accustomed to a certain predictability, and suddenly that pattern disappears. Breaking that expectation activates what we call the brain's salience network, the system that makes us attend to the unexpected and to changes. Then she begins to see you differently, not because you're less important, but because now your presence or absence takes on a new meaning. Here's the key point. When she notices you're no longer pursuing her, her mind starts asking questions. Why did she change? Is there someone else? Did I misinterpret her interest? Was I not as important to him as I thought? These questions often run in the background, like a program silently running, but they create tension. In psychology, we call it cognitive dissonance. Let me tell you about a real case that illustrates this. A few months ago, a 35-year-old man, we'll call him David, came to see me. He had met a woman he thought was wonderful, intelligent, funny, with similar values. They started dating, and he, with the best intentions, was completely available. He sent her good morning messages every morning, organized outings, always made the first move. We replied in seconds, and rearranged his schedule to be available whenever she wanted. What happened? She began to distance herself, respond with less enthusiasm, and make excuses not to see him. David was devastated and kept saying, "If I'm doing everything right, why is she pulling away?" Therein lay the problem. There was no ill intent, but from an attachment perspective, he was activating conflicting patterns. When someone is completely accessible, without uncertainty or mystery, the brain enters what I call abundance mode. In abundance, we stop valuing things. It's like having your favorite food always available. At first, it's wonderful, but over time, you lose your appetite. I explained something essential to David that I'm explaining to you now. Secure attachment. What we seek in a healthy relationship is informed from chasing or total availability, but from a balance between closeness and autonomy. When you stopped chasing her and maintained your position, you weren't communicating disinterest. You were conveying something deeper and more attractive, that you have your own life, inner resources, that you don't need another person to complete you, but rather to complementing you. That's magnetic, because it awakens in her the desire to be with someone who is whole, not needy. But we must clearly distinguish. There's a huge difference between not pursuing her out of dignity and self-respect and playing manipulative games to provoke jealousy or anxiety. I'm not talking about ignoring her to make her suffer, or using silence as control, or feigning indifference while spying on her social media. I'm talking about something genuine, coming to understand your intrinsic value, that your peace of mind and self-esteem don't depend on whether someone reciprocates your feelings. When you withdraw from that authenticity, it shows. People detect authenticity. We sense the difference between someone playing games and someone who respects themselves. And this is fascinating. When she perceives that your withdrawal is sincere, not a tactic, her perception changes, because most people are used to others persisting, begging, insisting. There's someone making them lose their dignity. When you don't do that, when you maintain your integrity, she encounters something unexpected, someone who values themselves and doesn't accept crumbs of attention. From my clinical experience, that's extremely attractive. Now, I'm going to take you inside the female mind in a way you probably haven't experienced before. Based on thousands of conversations with women in therapy, I'll tell you about the 3 main thoughts that usually arise when a man stands firm and stops pursuing her. The first thought is a mix of surprise and bewilderment. She expects your messages and actions. When that stops, her brain goes into alert mode, and you go from being a constant to a variable, from predictable to intriguing. This change alters the implicit power dynamic. You're no longer the one who needs you, and that puts her in a new situation. She doesn't quite know how to handle he hablado con cientos de mujeres, y te digo con certeza. Ellas buscan hombres con los que sentirse seguras. La seguridad no viene de quien siempre busca aprobación, viene de quien está asentado en su propio valor. Ahora, algo crucial en supongamos que dejaste de perseguirla, mantuviste tu postura, y ella vuelve interesada, te busca y quiere verte. Ese instante es el más peligroso del proceso porque muchos hombres tiran por la borda todo lo logrado. Al sentirse recuperada la atención, vuelven al patrón anterior, responden al instante, reorganizan su vida, y persiguen de nuevo. En cuanto haces eso, ella se aleja porque su cerebro interpreta todo vuelve a la normalidad. Ya no hay reto, entonces ¿qué hacer? ¿Ignorarla para siempre? ¿Jugar difícil eternamente? No, eso sería igualmente destructivo y te convertiría en alguien emocionalmente indisponible. Lo que corresponde es mantener equilibrio, responder pero no de inmediato, mostrar interés pero conservar tu vida, aceptar planes, pero no todos. Acercarte sin perder tu centro. El objetivo no es conquistarla otra vez, sino establecer una dinámica sana, donde ambos inviertan equilibradamente. Aquí está la clave. En el primer reencuentro tras tu retirada necesitas transmitir algo sin palabras, pero con claridad. Me alegra verte, pero no dependo de que estés aquí. Disfruto tu compañía, pero no la necesito. Me interesas, pero no más de lo que me intereso a mí mismo. Ese equilibrio genera una atracción duradera, no la basada en novedad y química, sino en respeto mutuo y admiración. Debes saber identificar señales de que tu retirada está funcionando, para no caer en la ansiedad de pensar si haces lo correcto. La primera señal es que su comunicación aumenta, mensajes más largos, más frecuentes, inicio de conversaciones, comparte más de su día. Segunda señal, muestra curiosidad por tu vida. Quiere saber qué haces, con quién estás, cómo te va. Tercera señal, comienza a justificarse o explicarse sobre por qué antes no respondió o estuvo distante. Esto indica que le importa tu percepción. Cuarta señal, la física, cuando se ve en su lenguaje corporal se abre hacia ti, busca la mirada, ríe más, toca casualmente. No hace falta que aparezcan todas estas señales para confirmar que vas por buen camino. Son indicadores que confirman que tu valor está siendo reconocido y la dinámica cambia a tu favor. The second thought is self-examination. She questions what she did wrong, reviews conversations, wonders if she was cold, if she didn't appreciate her attention. This process occurs even in confident women. It's not female insecurity per se. It's the way the social brain seeks explanations when the patterns of those we care about change. It's a social survival mechanism. The third thought, the deepest and least discussed, is the reevaluation of your own worth. When you were the one pursuing her, your perceived value was lower than hers. You were the one who needed her, the one who invested more. But by withdrawing and standing firm, she has to recalculate. If she's not pursuing me anymore, maybe she has other options. Maybe she valued herself enough not to accept less. Maybe I underestimated what I had. At that point of reassessment, the dynamic can change completely. There's something else I'll explain later. The exact moment you must act if she comes back, because doing it wrong can ruin what you've achieved. Let's get technical. What happens biochemically when you stop pursuing her? This will help you understand why it works and why you shouldn't overuse it. Uncertainty in a relationship that matters to us triggers cortisol, the stress hormone. At moderate levels, cortisol keeps us alert and focused, like when you have an exam, and anxiety drives you to study more. By withdrawing, you introduce uncertainty. Her brain doesn't know what to expect, and that moderate level of cortisol keeps her thinking about you. It's not destructive stress if managed well. It's an activator that keeps her engaged. Then dopamine kicks in, the neurotransmitter associated with motivation, seeking, and desire. The interesting thing about dopamine is that it's released more during anticipation than during attainment. When you were always predictable and available, her brain didn't need to release dopamine in relation to you. She already had you. By creating space, her brain enters seeking mode. Dopamine increases, and that generates desire. That's why relationships where everything is too easy tend to lose their spark. The system needs uncertainty, anticipation, and challenge to sustain desire. It's not about superficiality. It's the architecture of our neurobiological system. But be warned, You can't keep someone in a state of chronic uncertainty. Persistent cortisol is harmful. It generates anxiety, insecure attachment, and destroys genuine connection. That's why this isn't a game. It's a life stance based on self-respect, not a manipulative tactic. I've seen many men who understand the concept but apply it incorrectly. That's why I'll talk about common mistakes. Withdrawing abruptly and without context, disappearing overnight after speaking daily doesn't communicate strength. It communicates emotional immaturity and an inability to manage conflict. The right approach is to withdraw gradually and congruently. If you invest significantly more than she does, strive for balance. If you always initiate, wait for her to take the initiative. Occasionally, you always suggest plans, let her suggest them as well. It's not about disappearing, it's about finding a balance. Another mistake is withdrawing while simultaneously expressing need through other means. You stop writing to her but like all her photos as soon as she posts them. You stop contacting her but canceled your plans when she contacts you. This inconsistency is worse than outright pursuit. It communicates that you're playing games without knowing how. The third devastating mistake is withdrawing out of resentment. You stop contacting her but with a victim mentality, dwelling on how she didn't appreciate what you did. She senses this resentment even if you don't say it, and your withdrawal loses its power. Withdrawing effectively implies peace, not war. It implies understanding that you deserve reciprocity without bitterness. Understanding attachment styles is essential because they determine how she will react to your withdrawal. Not all women respond the same way. It's not a matter of good or bad, but of personal histories. If she has a secure attachment style, your withdrawal will encourage healthy reflection. Perhaps she wasn't giving enough and will genuinely seek balance. If her style is avoidant, your withdrawal may bring initial relief. Your approach triggered you and threatened her autonomy. By withdrawing, she may feel relief. And then, if there was genuine interest, begin to miss you because your presence is no longer a threat. Now she can approach on her own terms, which is what her system needs to feel safe. The most complex case is when both of you have anxious attachment. A chaotic dance ensues. You pursue out of anxiety. She withdraws out of fear of abandonment, then protects herself by withdrawing. If you withdraw, her anxiety may escalate and generate desperate behaviors. If you give in to these behaviors without changing the dynamic, you will repeat the cycle. You will pursue again, she will withdraw, and you will be trapped in a toxic pattern. That is why your withdrawal must be genuine. A life stance to break dysfunctional attachment patterns. We live in a complex era for relationships. We are urged to be emotionally expressive, available, and communicative, and that is healthy, but something has been lost in that message. Dignity and self-respect are not toxic, nor are they signs of fragility. There's a distance between suppressing emotions and cultivating self-control, between being vulnerable and being dependent, between showing interest and losing your center. Many men today are confused about where to draw that line. When I say, don't chase her, I'm not asking you to hide your feelings or feign indifference. I'm asking for something deeper, that you maintain your sense of self, no matter what. You can show interest and be clear, communicative, and emotionally accessible. But it all has to stem from a place where your peace doesn't depend on her response. If she decides she's not interested, you accept it gracefully and move on without falling apart. That integrity is incredibly attractive, not because you're playing hard to get, but because it demonstrates genuine emotional maturity. We also have to consider the possibility no one wants. What if you back off, wait a reasonable amount of time, and she doesn't come back? It can mean several things. The most obvious. Perhaps she wasn't as interested as you thought, and although it hurts, it's better to know now than to invest months or years chasing someone without real intention. I remember a patient who, after 2 months of not pursuing a woman, didn't come back. He came to me, devastated. I explained something painful but liberating. Not pursuing isn't a magic formula for getting someone. It's a way of respecting yourself and figuring out if there's genuine interest. If she doesn't come back after giving her space, you've discovered she wasn't right for you, and that's invaluable. You save time and suffering and can dedicate yourself to someone who is truly interested. The second possibility, she needs more time. People with avoidant attachment styles or a history of relational trauma often require more space to process and open up. If there were signs of interest in the past, but she pulls away when faced with intensity, the best strategy is to continue with your life, but leave the door open. Don't block or delete her. Maintain availability but without dependence. The third possibility, there are circumstances beyond your control, family, health, or work problems that are draining her energy. In these cases, your withdrawal is compassionate. You allow her to resolve her issues without the pressure of attending to you. We arrive at the essential point. What you do internally during your withdrawal defines whether this will be a real transformation or an empty tactic. When you withdraw, you have a golden opportunity to work on yourself. I'm not just talking about the gym or improving your job. I'm talking about deep emotional work. Ask yourself why you are willing to lose dignity, examine attachment patterns, heal wounds that drive you to seek external validation. I've worked with many men who say, I'm physically withdrawing, but I feel miserable. I check her social media. I analyze every interaction. This shows that even though they physically withdraw, they remain emotionally attached. The true power of not pursuing emerges when you are genuinely okay with any outcome. If she comes back, great. If not, you're also at peace, because your worth doesn't depend on another person. This inner work requires time, reflection, and sometimes professional help because it touches on deep childhood wounds and accumulated beliefs. But when you truly heal, something magical happens. You stop needing them back. And paradoxically, you become more attractive because people can tell. When someone is whole on their own instead of depending on others, I want to touch on something. That explains why many men pursue relationships. There's a difference between being alone and feeling lonely. We often seek relationships not for a particular person, but to avoid loneliness. Loneliness is very uncomfortable and primal. Our brains are wired for connectioning. Ancient times, being alone implied danger. In that state of existential fear, we cling to any available bond, even if it's unhealthy or unreciprocated. We pursue relationships because it feels like an action that makes us feel connected. But until you learn to be alone without feeling desperate, you won't be able to sustain a healthy relationship. You'll always be operating from need rather than desire. Needing someone gives power to the other person and creates dynamics where you lose your appeal. Desiring someone, on the other hand, implies having the power to choose. You're fine on your own and you choose to be with that person because they enrich your life. This space of choice is where true love blossoms. You're together by choice, not out of need. Furthermore, there's a nonverbal language of self-worth that women pick up on even without words. It manifests in everyday actions. If she cancels at the last minute and you respond calmly, no problem. Another time, without dramatically rearranging your schedule, you're speaking the language of If you receive messages that warrant a deeper conversation and you decide to reply briefly and get on with your day, you're communicating that your time is valuable. If she tries to provoke jealousy by mentioning others and you respond with genuine indifference because you know your worth, you're demonstrating magnetic emotional strength. This language isn't aggressive or vindictive. It's firm. It's the stance of someone who knows themselves, knows what they deserve, and won't accept less for fear of being alone. When you maintain that consistent language, it changes how you're perceived, not just by the woman you're interested in, but by people in general. You'll start to receive respect. Your word will carry weight, and you'll attract genuine reciprocity. Authentic self-worth is a magnet for healthy relationships and repels those who seek to manipulate or control. It's time to debunk dangerous myths. First, playing hard to get works with all women every time is false and harmful. That tactic might work temporarily with anxious people or those with low self-esteem, but it's a house of cards that collapses. Do you really want a relationship based on games? Second myth. If you show too much interest, will scare her away. That oversimplifies things. What scares women away isn't genuine interest, but neediness, insecurity, and a lack of a life of their own. You can express clear and honest interest as long as it comes from abundance, not lack. I've seen relationships where the man was direct from the start, no games, vulnerable, and authentic. It worked because his vulnerability stemmed from strength. He knew his worth didn't depend on the outcome. Third myth. Women only want what they can't have, reduces women to superficial beings. The truth is that both women and men seek genuine connection, mutual respect, and someone who complements them without emotional dependence. Yes, in the initial stages, the brain responds more to what's challenging than what's easy. But once there's a deep connection, that rule loses its power. Let's talk about timing. It's rarely discussed, but it's crucial. You can be the right person at the wrong time. If you withdraw too soon, when you barely know each other, perhaps there wasn't enough of a connection, and she'll move on without a second thought. If you withdraw too late, after months of constant pursuit, she'll have labeled you as the one. This option is always available. And reversing that is much more difficult, though not impossible. The ideal time to recalibrate is when there's a clear disparity in investment. You're always the one initiating, proposing, and maintaining the connection. At that moment, before resentment grows and you lose dignity, you must adjust. Also, consider with the context of her life. If she's going through a personal crisis, your withdrawal may be received differently than if she's stable. This doesn't mean suspending your boundaries indefinitely, but rather being aware of the context. Now, something that might sound contradictory but is complementary. Before withdrawing completely, sometimes a direct conversation is worthwhile. Not always, but in many cases, especially if there's a history of saying something like, I feel like I'm investing much more in this connection than you are, and that doesn't seem healthy to me, can be incredibly helpful. This communication provides information about her intentions, eliminates ambiguity, and allows you to withdraw with dignity. It's not running away or playing games. It's adult maturity that communicates clear needs and boundaries. The tone should avoid complaining or a victim mentality, not "you never do anything for me." It's not a case of the problem, but rather a factual observation about the disparity and a declaration that you won't continue in that pattern. After that conversation, your actions must match your words. If you say you won't always be the one to initiate, then actually stop initiating. Consistency is key to your credibility and attractiveness. Back to the scenario. You withdrew, worked on yourself, and now she's back with genuine interest. There's a different energy, and it's a real test. Your first impulse will be to run back and accept anything. If you give in, you lose all the progress you've made. The right approach is what I call calibrated openness. You're willing to reconnect. You show appreciation, but without giving up your boundaries. In practice, if she texts you after weeks, don't respond instantly. Wait a few hours. Respond warmly, but concisely. Don't resume with the same intensity as before. Let her do some of the work. If she suggests meeting up, don't restructure your life to accommodate. "I'd love to, but I'm busy that day. How about Thursday?" And if that Thursday doesn't work for her either, don't keep offering endless alternatives. Say, "Let me know when you can and we'll coordinate." This dance seems calculated, but it isn't. It's about establishing a dynamic of reciprocity from the start. If she truly makes the effort, shows genuine interest, and you build something healthy. If she gets frustrated and pulls away again, you've confirmed she wasn't ready for a balanced relationship. Some situations warrant a permanent walkout without looking back. Not all relationships deserve patience. If she only seeks you out when she's alone or bored and ignores you when she has better options, she doesn't need you. She's using you as an emotional safety net. You deserve to be a priority, not a backup plan. If she creates a pattern of reaching out when you pull away and withdrawing when you reach out, generating instability and constant anxiety, that's toxicity. No amount of playing hard to get will fix it. If she openly disrespects you, denigrates you in front of others, or constantly makes you feel inadequate, your dignity is not negotiable. Often, we cling to people who treat us badly because I have unfinished inner work to do on why we believe we deserve it. If you're attracted to them, if you systematically end up in relationships that cause you pain, the problem isn't the strategy. It's unresolved attachment patterns. I want to lead you to a different conclusion. Although we talk about what a woman thinks when you stop pursuing her, this should never have been solely about her. The entire process, seizing the pursuit, maintaining your dignity, developing self-worth should transform something within you. That the change transcends whether she comes back or not. When you integrate these lessons and achieve inner wholeness, you begin to attract better people, make wiser decisions, and live from a place of abundance. This not only improves your romantic relationships, but also impacts friendships, your career, and your relationship with yourself. Because the pattern of chasing is rarely confined to love alone. I've seen patients devastated by unrequited love. After months of work, they tell me, "I no longer care if she comes back. I've built a life I love, relationships that nourish me, and I've found myself." That transformation is the true reward, not acquiring someone, but becoming the person who doesn't need to chase because they already attract healthy, reciprocal relationships. To conclude this journey, the most important truth, when you decide not to chase and stand firm in your dignity, you make one of the most powerful decisions. Not because it's a foolproof technique for getting attention, but because it's the only way to know if there's something real on the other side. If she comes back genuinely willing to invest, you can build something beautiful from a healthy foundation. If he doesn't come back, you've avoided years of suffering chasing after someone who won't value you. More important than that is what you discover about yourself, that you can be alone without falling apart, that your worth doesn't depend on the approval of others, that you can set boundaries and maintain them, even when it's uncomfortable. These lessons will stay with you forever. They'll make you a better partner, a better parent, a better friend, and a better professional, because you'll have learned that healthy love never springs from desperation or need. If this content has been helpful, please do 3 things. First, subscribe to the channel. We'll continue exploring topics that transform lives. Second, like the video not for my ego, but so the algorithm can show it to those who need it. Third, share your experience. Are you going through this now? Have you applied these principles before? What questions do you have? I read every comment, and it helps me create useful content. If you want to delve deeper and need personalized support, consider seeking professional help. A good therapist can untangle patterns, heal wounds, and help you build genuine self-esteem for healthy relationships. You're not alone in this. Millions grapple with the complexities of modern relationships, making mistakes, learning, and growing. The difference between those who find healthy love and those who don't is awareness, inner work, and the courage to stand by your values, even when it hurts. But there's an even deeper level to this process that many people overlook. The silent transformation that occurs when you stop building your identity around external approval. When you stop chasing, you're not only creating space in the relationship, you're also creating space within yourself. And that inner space opens the door to a life-changing discovery. Learning to relate from a place of conscious choice, not fear. Because when you stop acting out of fear of losing someone, you begin to see clearly something that was previously obscured: what kind of connections you truly desire, what kind of treatment you're willing to accept, and what kind of energy you're bringing to your relationships. This level of awareness marks the boundary between repeating past patterns and embarking on a new emotional journey. And this is where many women and many men to feel a powerful, energetic shift within you. It's not something you say, not a message or a powerful statement. It's a presence, an inner stability that's evident in your posture, your tone of voice, your decisions. It's the kind of presence that makes others see you differently because it conveys security and serenity, two deeply attractive qualities. When you reach this point, you no longer seek to prove your worth. You simply embody it. And, without realizing it, you're sending the most powerful signal. I know who I am. And whoever is by my side will be someone who adds to my life, not someone who takes away from it. This inner clarity acts as a natural filter. People who aren't ready for a healthy connection will naturally drift away, and those who can reciprocate with maturity will be drawn to you. Furthermore, this new stage allows you to observe the relationship more objectively. You're no longer trapped in the cycle of anxiety, idealization, and disappointment. You can see patterns. You can notice inconsistencies. You can recognize when something isn't aligned with your values. And that gives you a strength that very few people possess. The ability to walk away without resentment when a relationship doesn't nourish you. But it also gives you an even more valuable virtue. The ability to stay free from the constraints of a truly reciprocal relationship. Because now you no longer love from fear, but from presence. You no longer give to receive, but to share. You no longer seek to fill voids, but to expand who you already are. And this is where relationships truly flourish. When two people find themselves whole, not perfect, but whole, the connection ceases to be a desperate refuge and becomes a space for mutual growth. In that kind of relationship, there's no need to chase or run. There's no power struggle or games of distance. There's honesty, rhythm, balance, and that, though it may seem simple, is extraordinarily rare. That's why, if you've come this far in your journey, I want you to understand something that perhaps no one has ever told you. What you're building isn't just the possibility of a better relationship. You're building a version of yourself that will change all your future relationships. You're developing the kind of inner strength that will make you a more present partner, a more authentic friend, and a person more aligned with their purpose. And when a woman senses that, when she feels you're centered, that you're not trying to fill the void through her, but rather walking alongside her from a place of stability, the level of connection you can reach is infinitely deeper than any quick conquest or superficial attraction. That's the true reward of not chasing. Discovering that the most valuable love always begins with how you relate to yourself. When that foundation is solid, everything else flows naturally. Now that you understand the internal transformation that occurs when you stop chasing, we need to take an even deeper step, understanding how to build a truly stable connection after that process. Because letting go of the chase isn't the end of the road. It's merely the point where a conscious relationship begins. And many people, even after doing tremendous inner work, stumble right here because they don't know how to sustain what they've gained. When she approaches Agonif, she does, our crucial moment arises that very few know how to handle. Most get swept away by the emotion of the reunion and, without realizing it, revert to their old patterns. But if you want to build something different, this is the moment where your inner growth must be reflected in your outward actions. The first step in this new phase is establishing an emotional rhythm. Healthy relationships aren't born from sudden bursts of intensity or endless silences. They're born from a balanced tempo where both partners can breathe, move, and express themselves without fear. This means you no longer seek immediate answers, nor do you get anxious if there are natural pauses. Now you understand that authentic connection has its own flow, one that depends not on anxiety, but on presence. The second step is something almost no one teaches: learning to receive. Many men are so used to being the ones who invest, who support, who offer, that when someone starts to reciprocate, they don't know how to allow the other person to contribute. Receiving attention, receiving care, receiving genuine interest is also part of a healthy relationship. And when you allow her to approach without disrupting your inner balance, you're sending a powerful signal. I'm available for a mature relationship, not for an unequal dynamic. The third step involves developing conscious communication. I'm not talking about endless conversations or dramatizing emotions. I'm talking about calm, clarity, about saying what you feel without making demands, about expressing your boundaries without aggression, about speaking from serenity, not from need. This communication, simple, direct, and M is one of the most attractive traits because it demonstrates emotional regulation, maturity, and authenticity. But there's something crucial you must remember at this stage. Even if she comes back, even if she shows genuine interest, you can't allow your emotional well-being to depend solely on that relationship. The stability you've built within yourself must remain intact. If you abandon yourself as soon as the excitement of the connection returns, you'll fall back into the pattern that led to your initial frustration. But the goal isn't to win her back. The goal is to build a life where you remain the center of your own equilibrium. And here's where a change emerges that many women describe in therapy. When a man achieves this kind of inner stability, his energy becomes very different. It's not coldness. It's not distance. It's solidity. A calm presence that conveys he won't be swept away by pressure, urgency, or emotional ups and downs. This emotional stability feels like a safe haven. And in a world full of emotional instability, this is extremely valuable. Interestingly, at this stage, she also begins to show a different kind of vulnerability, no longer from insecurity or fear, but from openness. You begin to share more authentically to express doubts, desires, and concerns. And here's the critical point. You must respond with the same level of authenticity, but without losing yourself. In the process, it's a delicate balance. But when you achieve it, the connection deepens in a way that depends not on chance, but on awareness. This phase also demands a skill that very few people develop. The ability to observe the bond without anxiety, to see the relationship as it is, not as you wish it were, to evaluate whether there is truly emotional reciprocity, whether both of you are growing, or whether one of you is regressing. This calm observation allows you to move forward with clarity, without projected illusions or anticipated fears. And here comes the truth that defines this chapter. Not everyone who returns is ready to sustain a healthy relationship. Some come back because they sense your internal change, but they haven't changed themselves yet. Others return out of habit, nostalgia, or fear of loneliness. Your task is not to guess their intentions, but to evaluate their actions. Words may sound beautiful, but it is actions that reveal whether someone is willing to build something with you or just wants to occupy a temporary space. While you observe from this new level of awareness, you no longer feel obligated to accept any response. Now you can choose. And that ability to choose is the foundation of a mature relationship. When you choose from your own worth and not from need, the other person also begins to show their most authentic self. It is there that the possibility of creating a lasting bond arises, one based on mutual respect, emotional responsibility, and genuine reciprocity. This is the essence of emotional growth. Discovering that the real work wasn't about getting their attention, but about becoming someone who doesn't need to chase after it because they live from a place of coherence, stability, and self-worth. That kind of energy transforms your relationships and transforms your life. Now that you've regained your inner stability and the connection is beginning to rebuild, comes the most delicate part of this whole process. Sustaining the relationship without losing yourself. Attracting someone from a place of balance is a significant achievement, but maintaining that balance long-term is what truly transforms your relationships. The first principle of this phase is understanding that a healthy relationship isn't sustained by constant intensity, but by consistency. Intensity may be captivating, but consistency builds. Consistency between what you say and do, between what you feel and express, between what you promise and deliver. When you maintain this consistency, you convey something very few people offer today: healthy emotional predictability. The other person knows they can count on you, but also knows you won't lose yourself trying to please them. The second principle is learning to identify the precise point where you need to adjust your closeness. Every relationship is a dance between connection and space. If you get too close too quickly, the relationship can become overwhelming. If you pull away too much, it can cool down. Sustaining a mature relationship involves developing your own rhythm, a balance where both of you can breathe. This isn't strategy, it's emotional sensitivity, listening to what the relationship needs, not what your anxiety wants. The third principle is to establish micro boundaries, not aggressive or drastic boundaries, but small daily reminders of your worth. This could mean not responding when you're exhausted, not canceling important plans for something unexpected, or not taking on emotional responsibilities that aren't yours. Each micro boundary reinforces an essential truth. You are present, but not at the expense of yourself. And that combination, presence with boundaries, is one of the strongest foundations of stable attraction. But there's something deeper too. Consider, even after improving the dynamic, old patterns may try to resurface. Your mind may be tempted to chase after the slightest sign of distance again. Your mind may revert to its insecurities or defense mechanisms. This is normal. Emotional transformation isn't linear, it spirals. So, when you notice a sign of regression, don't panic. Breathe, observe, and consciously choose to act from your new center of strength, not from your old wounds. In this phase, it's crucial to recognize 3 indicators that tell you if the relationship is truly moving towards something stable or if it's simply repeating cycles. First indicator, reciprocity becomes natural. You don't have to remind her to reach out, contribute, or show interest. She does it spontaneously. When reciprocity flows effortlessly, it's a sign that both of you are emotionally present. Second indicator, there are genuine conversations about needs. When something bothers you and you express it calmly, she doesn't get defensive or interpret it as an attack. She listens, processes it, and responds openly. And you do the same when she expresses her emotions. This creates fertile ground where trust can grow. Third indicator, the connection becomes a space of calm, not anxiety. If before the relationship left you with doubts, tension, or uncertainty, now it leaves you with clarity, tranquility, and purpose. This doesn't mean there aren't challenges, but it means the bond no longer jeopardizes your inner balance. When these indicators are present, what you're building is no longer an intermittent cycle of attraction, but the foundation of a solid relationship, a relationship where you both choose each other daily, not out of need, but out of mutual appreciation. But you must also be attentive to signs that indicate the relationship is trying to revert to the old dynamic. Signs like, you find yourself overinvesting again without realizing it. She starts to become distant right after moments of closeness. Communication becomes inconsistent. You feel like you're walking on thin ice again, trying not to ruin anything. When you notice patterns like these, don't ignore them. They're signs that invite you to readjust, to return to your center, to remember what you've already learned. And if, after adjusting, communicating, and observing, the relationship continues to show a pattern that affects your peace, you must remember something essential. Your dignity is non-negotiable. A healthy relationship doesn't demand sacrifices that destroy your well-being. Mature love isn't built on constant renunciations, but on constant balance. Therefore, sustaining this phase doesn't mean tolerating what hurts you, but rather honoring what strengthens you. In this stage, you'll also discover something few people understand until they experience it. When you truly change, it's not just your relationships that change. Your way of loving changes too. Your love becomes more selective, more conscious, and deeper. You no longer give your energy to those who don't value it. You no longer idealize. You no longer beg for attention. Now you choose from a place of clarity, not from a place of lack. And that, in the end, makes all the difference. It's a type of connection that doesn't break easily because it's built on 2 whole people, not 2 people trying to complete each other. Over time, you'll notice that maintaining this balance no longer requires effort. It becomes your new way of relating. And at that point, the relationship, if it continues, ceases to be a challenge and becomes a safe space where both of you can grow without losing your essence. Now that you've learned to maintain balance without losing your center, it's time to explore what a truly healthy relationship looks like when this new level of awareness begins to integrate within both of you. Because attracting someone from a place of stability is one thing, maintaining it is another. But the most transformative thing is building upon it. The first thing you'll notice in this new stage is that the relationship stops feeling like a constant test. You're no longer checking every gesture, every message, every silence. The anxiety that used to accompany every interaction begins to dissolve, and in its place, a sense of naturalness emerges. The connection flows without tension and without the fear of ruining something. This happens because you're no longer acting from insecurity, but from emotional coherence. The second profound change is that you both begin to show vulnerability without fear. Not the desperate vulnerability that seeks validation, but the mature vulnerability that comes from trusting yourself and the connection. You can express doubts without feeling like you're losing power. She can express fear without you interpreting it as rejection. That openness is the strongest emotional foundation that people can share. Furthermore, you'll notice that you both begin to make decisions together with more calm and clarity. Not impulsive or urgent decisions, but decisions that respect each other's timing, priorities, and boundaries. When a relationship reaches this point, there's no longer a need to control or guess. You both move forward from a place of conscious choice. However, even at this level, doubts, old fears, or certain lingering patterns can surface. The emotional brain doesn't erase its entire history overnight. Therefore, when she shows signs of fear of commitment, insecurity, or overthinking, your task isn't to chase after her or distance yourself, but to remain steadfast in your serenity. Emotional stability acts as a compass. If you stay centered, it's easier for her to regain her equilibrium as well. In this phase, one of the most common mistakes is confusing calmness with indifference. Some men, afraid of falling back into old habits, begin to exaggerate the distance. But excessive distance isn't stability, it's disconnection. The key lies in balanced presence. You are available, but not dependent. You show affection, but you don't overwhelm. You care, but you don't withdraw. This conscious presence is what solidifies the relationship as a safe space for both of you. Another fundamental aspect of this stage is emotional consistency. Can't afford to go back to extremes, neither chasing after the first sign of conflict, nor disappearing to protect yourself. Consistency creates healthy predictability, and healthy predictability builds trust. And when there is trust, even disagreements become opportunities for growth, not threats. It's also important to recognize what a mature relationship looks like when both partners are operating from this new emotional frequency. There are 3 main signs. Sign 1. Silences feel safe. You don't need to fill every moment with words to confirm that everything is okay. Comfort in silence is one of the clearest signs of a solid connection. Sign 2. Individual. Growth as a couple progress in parallel. You no longer sacrifice your development for the relationship, nor does it sacrifice its own. You both support each other in your goals, without losing your emotional independence. Sign 3. Differences are not perceived as threats, but as opportunities for better understanding. In mature relationships, disagreement doesn't destroy, it strengthens, because both partners know that the bond is greater than a temporary misunderstanding. But for this stage to truly work, you need to make a final decision, a decision that defines the kind of relationship you will have from now on. Choose self-respect every day, because from that respect springs your patience, your boundaries, your clarity, and your capacity to love without losing your essence. When you choose your inner worth as the starting point, the relationship becomes a place where both of you can expand, not a space where one dismantles themselves to support the other. And something beautiful happens when both of you reach this level. You no longer ask, does she love me? But rather, how can we grow together? You no longer worry about falling into old patterns because you have built new foundations. You no longer depend on fear or uncertainty to feel connection, because the connection itself becomes enough. This is the point where love stops being a roller coaster and becomes a conscious journey, where attraction ceases to be a fleeting impulse and transforms into a healthy emotional commitment, where you and she no longer choose each other from a place of lack, but from a place of abundance. And that is, without a doubt, one of the greatest gifts you can experience when you decide to stop chasing and begin to live from your true self.